Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jami Albright. And this week on the show, we have us.
Yes, we are going to talk about tropes today.
Yes. I love talking tropes. So, but before we do that, do you have anything going on this week?
Well, I had a book bub last week. I was able to get a free deal on the first in the historical series, and that's the first time that's been free. So I spent a lot of time. I updated my categories. You know how you can add like 10 categories to the ebook and the print. So I did that for like the first 3 books in the series, and then I kind of ran out of steam. And I was like, okay, that's good enough. I didn't get them all done, but at least I got that started.
And
then I optimized back matter and did all that stuff.
Oh, that's good.
So as we're recording that, we're recording today on June 1st. And so it's still free, but by the time this goes out, it should go back to paid. And I've got some sales stuff going on. And so I've been working on that. So and packing boxes because we're supposed to close this week on our house.
That's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah. So what about you?
Well, before we got on, I was saying, my audiobook's live, but it's not. It's live tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Okay.
It's tomorrow, June 2nd. Because when you said June 1st, I was like, wait, today's June 1st? Yeah, no, it's tomorrow.
Okay. But still, that's very exciting. Yes. So this is Homecoming King, right?
Homecoming King, narrated by the great Virginia Rose and Aiden Snow, and they are awesome. They are, they really bring Cash and Tiger to life, and and
you're really happy with it.
I'm very happy with it. I'm very, very happy with it. Yeah. So I did a little headliner thing where Headliner's a program that Sarah uses for the podcast to kind of put on audio clips, and I used it for the audiobook.
It's really easy. It's free.
It is easy. It's a little like, I don't know how user friendly it is when you first go in, but if you just play around with it, it's pretty easy.
Yeah. It's super easy if you do it with a podcast because it auto loads all that stuff. So I think it's a little more difficult if you do an audiobook, but it can be done.
Right. And so that was cool. So that's in various places. And my book that I'm supposed to send to the developmental editor on Saturday, I might actually get to send it to her a little bit early. Like, it's going really well, and I'm pretty pleased with it. You never know. And but as I'm going through it, I've been really, really happy about it.
Yeah.
So
it's a little perspective, isn't it? Like you're in the middle of it, and it feels awful and slow and everything.
Well, and because it takes me forever, and I lose sight of stuff, and so. But now, I'm feeling super productive and ambitious. And I'm thinking maybe I should start the next one like when this one goes, because the characters in the next one play heavily in this book. So, but I haven't really decided if I'm going to do that. But I'm on vacation next week, so it would be the next week that I did it. But I'm feeling really good about it. Yeah.
Well, that's so good. And I mean, you can think about it while you're on vacation. And if you still feel like that when you come back, then, even if you just get a couple chapters down, it's a start,
Right. Exactly. You sort of have, where you're starting from. Also today I am the featured author and on the cover of Indie Author Magazine. It's a new magazine that, several people in the indie community have put together. It's a great article. They did a really good job. And, but besides the article about my publishing journey, there's some really good articles about drafting and the new Amazon Vella and kind of just some other things that are really pertinent to the indie author life. So everybody should check it out.
Okay, so it was called Indie
Author Magazine.
Magazine. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, if you go to my profile, and I think, and I posted it in our Facebook group, in the Wish I'd Known Then for Writers Facebook group. But there's a link, and you have to subscribe. I think if you subscribe, it's $5.99 a month. But last month's was fabulous. This month's is equally good. I haven't read everything in it this month, but it was really good information.
Cool. Well, that sounds great. Well, so I'll try and link to that in the show notes and Headliner too, in case anybody wants to check that out. So
yeah, Mary Merriweather wrote the article about me, and it was just fun talking to her, and yeah, it was cool. So that's awesome. Very humbled, and my I use my headshot, as the photo that I gave them. It's giant. I'm like, we tone that down a little bit, but yeah, it's fun.
That is good. Yeah. Okay. All right. So
let's get into tropes. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about what they are and mostly how they're used in romance and mystery, because that's what we know the most. But I think it would be applicable because people can, take the things we talk about and think about how it applies to their genre.
Right. Because here's the deal. And, if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. You need to read in the genre you're writing in. So if you're reading in the genre you're writing in, then you're going to know the tropes because you're familiar with that genre and the genre expectations of the readers of that genre. So that's super important. And, but yeah, we'll talk about tropes for us for right now.
Yeah. And I was going to say, this episode is kind of inspired by two things.
Yes.
One was the interview Jami did on the Best Book Ever podcast.
Yes.
With Julie. And we'll have a link to that because that was really great.
Yeah. Julie Strauss she hosts the Best Book Ever podcast. And it is such a great podcast because she talks to all kinds of people, and it's all kinds of books. Like I did The Hating Game as my favorite book, or the best book ever, but it's maybe not the best book I've ever read. It is really written really well, but there's just something about that book that resonated with me. And that's the same with all of her guests. So there's a wide variety of books, from Lolita to My Hating Game to Serena Bowen's, I think it's a male romance. Maybe it's not, but anyway, there's just a lot, it's a wide variety, and Julie's just a great interviewer. So it's a fun podcast.
Yeah. So I listened to that, and that got me thinking about tropes, and it made me think about a podcast I listened to a long time ago on the Creative Penn, and she interviewed Tim Waggoner, and he's a horror writer, but they talked about tropes, and we'll do this kind of at the end, he had a bunch of suggestions for how to do fresh twist on tropes. So that was the other kind of inspiration for this podcast.
Yeah.
So we'll link to all that. But I think first, let's read just a definition of what a trope is.
Sure.
So it's a convention or device that establishes a predictable or stereotypical representation of a character, setting, or scenario in a creative work. So that's from dictionary.com. And I don't know that we would say that that we're writing stereotypical things. We're writing things that it's a familiar scenario that people recognize.
Right.
And it has a whole bunch, like an infinite amount of possibilities that you can do with a single trope.
Correct. And why would you want to use tropes? It makes it easier for the reader to know if they'll like the book. Tropes sell. And it makes it easier to write the book. If you're writing to a trope, it makes it somewhat easier to kind of know where you need to go. I mean, you can, like, Rockstar is a wake up married in Vegas trope. I mean, that's a trope. But I put a spin on it because really then I took it and made it a small town romance. So, you can do things like that. But if you if you know the tropes and you know what readers expect from those tropes, then it's sort of like that. You can break the rule once you know the rule.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I can't swear that I knew all the rules when I wrote Rockstar, because that book has about 80 tropes in it, but I didn't want to miss any.
Put them all in.
Yeah, exactly. throw them all against the wall, see which one stuck. But it still, it makes it a little easier to write the book. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it gives you a framework where you're like, okay, I know that it's kind of got this shape. The book has a certain shape to it, and you can follow along, but then you can do your own thing along the way. There's all that. There's a lot of debate. People think, like they don't like boundaries, but I think sometimes boundaries make you be more creative. Like if you know you're writing in this certain type,
right?
But what can you do new or different with that same thing? It can make your creativity even better, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like romance. People talk about it being formulaic. It's not necessarily formulaic. I mean, it is to a degree, but that doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, do you know how hard it is to be creative and have them, if you're writing steamy romance, make that creative every time you write it and not repetitive. I mean, that's really, really hard. And the people who do it really well, my hat is off to them, because I don't know, I would not necessarily put myself in the category of doing that part really well, because I that's still really hard for me. But the people that do it well, there's some fantastic writers. So
I compared this. I talked about this in my cozy course, the How to Outline a Cozy Mystery, and I talked about how, like, a cozy has a certain format, things that you go through. But it's like a house. Like there's a certain way you build a house. You have a roof and walls and floor and all this stuff.
Foundation.
How many different designs you can have of a house? It's the same way. You have the same building blocks, but you can make it your own.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think it's limiting at all. I think it's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. And then just to touch on real quick again about trope selling, if you have a well-defined trope in your book, you can use that in advertising. You can use that in your blurb. Tropes sell. People know, like, they have an idea of what they're going to get with, when you say an opposites attract or enemies to lovers, they have an idea. And so it can even make a mediocre blurb sell if it's very clear that it is a enemies to lover or a rock star or a wake up married in Vegas. I mean, so just remember that when you're doing ad copy and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think I've leaned into that as much as I could. And I think that, like, we're going to talk about, like, the different tropes in romance and mystery. And I think romance tropes are really well defined and very specific, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
So, So I think I have not done that as much in my blurb writing and stuff, but it's something that I could lean into, which would be really smart.
Yeah.
So what are some of the typical tropes in romance?
So these are sort of in order of my preferences, and I'm sure I've missed some. So, if anybody has any others, pop it in the Facebook group, because, I haven't covered them all. So forced proximity, love me some forced proximity. In fact, I think almost all of my books except one have forced proximity. Like, I love forced proximity. Yes. Enemies to lovers, opposites attract, second chance, friends to lovers, secret baby or surprise baby, sports, a wounded hero. I do love a wounded hero. Time travel, rock star, over 40, male, small town, stepbrother, billionaire, alpha hole. So I'm sure that I've missed some, but those are some of the
and I feel like
and I think those are some of the most popular ones right now.
And most well known. There was another one that I thought, like, marriage of convenience.
Marriage of convenience,
but that can be more like romance,
forced proximity,
or not romance, Regency.
Yes. Well, and actually in Rockstar I have that's a marriage of convenience.
Yeah.
I mean, they get married.
Yeah.
Because they both need something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but, and I see that a lot. And so marriage of convenience, that is a good one.
Yeah. So that's a long, long list.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. You got a lot to choose from. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, do you want me to go on and talk about some of the typical tropes in mystery?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. So I think the way I think of these is like, there's like the situation setup tropes, like there's, and mostly these are going to be like for cozy mystery or traditional mystery, because that's kind of my jam. But like in a cozy, it's very common to have somebody who's like down and out and returning home. They're going back to their small town. A lot of times they've been dumped or divorced, and they're kind of starting over. So starting over is a trope. And then another big one is inheriting a business or a home. Like a lot of times they're going back just to take care, just to put the thing on the market and get rid of it, get the money, and then they get all involved in the.
Or they inherit a business they know absolutely nothing about. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can give a lot of humor. So, and then in the traditional mystery, there's like the wealthy head of the family gathers everybody together and is often in a remote location, and announces that he or she is changing their will like the next day, and then they die that night before. So then you're all set up. And then you've got like just different types of mysteries themselves that have tropes, like locked room, country house mystery, like the isolated setting, a murder that no one thinks is a murder. Maybe they think it's a suicide or an accident, disappearing body, the howdunit, which is like you kind of know who did it, but you're figuring out how they did it, or the reverse whodunit, like you know at the beginning. That's just another name for it. Like, you know who did it and you're figuring it out as that kind of backwards. Let's see. Other mystery tropes would be the murderer isn't the most obvious suspect. It's always, the least obvious suspect. There's like the strange clue that doesn't make sense. There's the absence of something as a clue or a substitute body. Like you find out, oh, this person isn't really dead. Somebody else was dead. And then there's like the common character plot story arcs would be like the discreet sleuth, the consulting detective, the great detective, kind of like Sherlock Holmes. And a really common trope story arc would be like the romantic subplot with the sleuth and the investigating officer, romance between them. And they're, that's very common in cozy traditional romance or traditional mystery.
Yeah.
So that's a big overview.
And I love all of those. I think those are great. I have some of my own favorites in that. I love the kind of reverse whodunit. I love that. There's several books or movies that are kind of like that, and I always get into those. Those are great. Yeah. What do you think? What would you say are some of the favorites of kind of readers in that genre, though? Do you see?
Well, I think like cozy readers in particular love the small town, kind of going back to the small town, starting over. And I think that like the country house mystery, that's one. And like the isolated remote location, later on we're going to talk about like that's that could be like a country house, that could be like a ship or a train, that could be like a retirement home. That new book, the Richard Osman, I can't think of it. It takes place in a retirement home, and that's kind of that forced small closed circle. So like anything like that. So anything on a train, anything on a ship. Like I think part of the success of that book, The Woman in Cabin 10, was people, ooh, a mystery on a ship, and they like those settings that they're closed. So I think that's really popular. It's just and then there were none. There's been so many spin-offs of that, like the island mystery on an island.
Right.
So,
Right. Now, what about paranormal cozies? I know you don't write those, but I mean, are you familiar with what are some of the tropes in those are? Are they similar, or are they?
They're similar. There's a lot that are very specific to that. Like there's certain aspects of the magic and stuff that readers, they really want that supernatural, but they want it light and not dark and scary. They want it light and more fun.
Right.
And there's a lot of emphasis on the relationships between the characters. And I don't know that I could speak to specific tropes like that readers
Is
would
it
want this.
like a portal or something like that?
No,
that
I think usually it's like somebody discovers that they have a power or something, and then they've got to figure out
how to use
it works.
Yeah.
Okay. Or they go to a certain place and they're like, once they're there, they're like, oh, it brings out something in them that they didn't know they had.
Right.
And we talked to Amy Boyles. Way back at the beginning of the podcast. So I'll link to that episode.
Yes, that's good.
A lot of tropes for that. She's way more articulate about that than I am.
Well, I wanted to just briefly check. I mean, we are not experts in these genres, but I do think that there's some things that are universal. Like in sci-fi, there's usually the reluctant captain or the captain, who's drunk. He's
ragtag crew, right?
Yeah, ragtag crew. They got to save the universe, or they have a beat up ship that's barely working, but that ship's got to. Those are sort of some common tropes in that genre. In like urban fantasy, it's usually female heroine, and it can be one of two ways, because I read a lot of urban fantasy. Either they are the kick butt heroines that know exactly how to wield their power, and they kind of know more than everybody else. Like I'm thinking about the Kate Daniels series by Ilona Andrews. She like Kate knows the score. She knows things that the rest of the people in this world don't know, because she's descendant from this God, basically. And because he was man, but he kind of became a god sort of thing. And I prefer those. Like, there are also urban fantasy books, which I do love, like the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning, where the heroine, she has no clue what's going on. Like she's sort of stepped into this world and she has all this power, but she has no idea what to do with it. And she's constantly making mistakes that put other people at danger or get people killed or whatever. And well, I love that series. That is super frustrating sometimes about that. But so those are two sort of different things, but it's usually a female heroine. They have the power. There's always a baddie, there's one big baddie that kind of either, if it doesn't span the entire series, it spans a 3-book arc or a 4-book arc or something like that. And then if the series goes on, there's another baddie, thrillers, usually it's, there's
a ticking clock.
Ticking clock, yes.
It's like a huge threat to a huge number of people, if not like the whole world, right?
Yes.
You usually know who the bad guy is.
Right.
And the main characters are trying to either stop him or stop whatever, or her, whatever the bad person is trying to accomplish.
Right.
And it's like super fast paced, right?
Yes, super fast paced. Or the person, usually a guy, usually a hero, he is he usually has something really bad in his past, something bad or sad. Also, the person is after them, the person is like, the serial killer is killing a lot of people, but they're also after this guy,
the investigator, or whatever.
Yeah. So but whatever they are, if you're writing in that genre, you need to know what they are. And I cannot stress that enough, clearly, because I've said it multiple times, but ad nauseum. But it really is so important. I mean,
because once you know what people like, then you can put your own stamp on it.
Yes. And you're giving readers what they want. I mean, you're going to be way more successful in your genre, if you know what the tropes are and the expectations that the readers have about those tropes, like a wake up married in Vegas trope is usually one of them freaking out, running away, or, or them having to come to something. Well, if you did that and they all just went, oh, well, we're going to get a divorce and let's just annul this thing and move on. I mean, that's not the trope. That's not the expectation. So you need to know what they are and what the reader loves about them. And if you're a reader in that genre, then because you love those things about them. So anyway, I've talked about that plenty. I don't need to.
I was just making a note of, I thought of the title of that book
good.
that I was trying to think of. It's called The Thursday Murder Club. So that was the one I know people were like yelling at their podcast app.
Yes.
It's such a popular book.
Get it right. Yeah.
So let's go through what are we're going to talk about favorite tropes and then books with those tropes. And I don't think we'll have all the links to all these in the show notes, but I mean, they're going to be easy to find.
Yeah.
So, So,
okay.
So you go through some of your favorites.
Okay. So Forced Proximity is Natural Born Charmer, one of my favorite books ever by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. It's an older book. I said this on Julie's podcast, like not just with Susan's books, but with other books written kind of in the 80s and 90s. There's the stipulation is they're not always completely PC, and
there's some things that kind of make you cringe. Just
a little bit now, but I think that book holds up. That book is not really one of the problem where I find a problem. He's he's a football player healing. He picks up this girl on the side of the road. In fact, the first line of the book is something like, it's not every day you see a headless beaver walking down the road. He's in a beaver costume. Right. So, it just starts out, it's very fast paced. It's very fun. And they end up having to live in this same place. It's awesome. And then also Beach Read, which is by Emily Henry. And it came out, I think it was last year. One of my favorite books last year. And they're living next door to each other. So, that's not like living in the same house, but they're living next door to each other. It's
like a kind of forced proximity.
Yes, it is, because like they can see each other through the window. So
you have interactions with a neighbor that you don't like, that can like really be stressful.
Right. And they have history. So that there are other tropes that play into it. It's a little bit of a second chance, but forced proximity is probably the biggest one on that. Then Enemies to Lovers, The Hating Game, as I've said, by Sally Thorne. The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. And that's also forced proximity too. But they're mostly enemies, and their siblings get married. And I think right after or right before they find out that it was right before the husband is cheating, so the siblings who hate each other go on this honeymoon, but they have to pretend to be the married couple. And then The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score, such a fun book. It's she hates him. I don't know that he hates her that much, but she really hates him. And then It Happened One Autumn by Lisa Kleypas, and that is a historical. Love that book. One of my favorites. Opposites Attract, Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas, and Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. These are all. And then The Beast of Bestwick by Amelia Howard. These are all historicals. Love them so much. Wounded Hero, probably one of my favorite books of all time, is Look the Part by Julianne. He has an autistic son, which is really, I think the people that I know that have autistic sons or autistic children have said that this book is written very well to that, but it's not about that as much as it is his journey, this hero's journey, and with the heroine. It's just so good. I laughed, I cried. It's really good. Secret Baby, Nobody's Baby But Mine by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. And this book is the book that like made me think, oh my gosh, if I could make people feel this way, I think my entire life would be made. Like, it just touched me and made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in forever. Time Travel, Outlander by Diana Gabaldon, and then Parallel and Intersector. It's a duet by Elizabeth O'Rourke. And the cool thing about Parallel and Intersect is it's parallel timelines. It's not like future, or it's really, really cool. Over 40 Romance, love that. And that is Aftercare by L.B. Dunbar. And Male Romance, Him by Serena Bowen. Love that book. It's very angsty. Billionaire Romance, which I don't read a lot of these, but Tangled. It is hilarious. It is one of the first books that broke that. What is it? Is it the third wall or the fourth wall where
you're talking directly to the audience?
Yeah. It is hilarious. I mean, so funny. Such a funny book. Rockstar, besides my own. Lick by Kylie Scott and Built to Fall by Julia Wolfe. And then Small Town, love those because that's what I write. The Kate Canterbury's Talbot Cove series is very good. And then Erica Kelly's Calamity Falls series is very good. And then the Grumpy Hero, which I didn't put in my list, but that's a big one too. Kind of this grumpy grumpster hero is The Bell and the Beard by Kate Canterbury. So those are mine. Yeah.
Okay. So just so y'all know, Jami just has all these titles down and she remembered all those authors' names. I'm just so impressed.
I did write a few of them because I was afraid that I wouldn't remember, but most of them I do. Yeah.
Yeah. But the books made a big impression on you.
Yeah.
So easy to remember.
Gosh. Yeah. I think in the list, I would have to say Natural Born Charmer, The Hating Game, Nobody's Baby But Mine, and Look the Part. My favorites by far. Yeah.
Well, that is cool. Well, I've been making little notes over here because I was thinking of titles that I was like, oh, I didn't put this on my list. I should talk about these.
Yeah.
So some of my favorites are like if we're talking about the country house mystery, the closed circle, like you're isolated or alone, like The Mysterious Affair of Styles, The Body in the Library, by Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with her. Hers are classics. And then there's the Flavia de Luce series. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No,
it's
I'm not.
Got a YA character. I mean, it's a young woman. I'm surprised they marketed it to adults. It's got a character. The main character is like, I can't remember, like 10-ish when the book starts. Kind of like Enola Holmes.
Yeah.
But so it starts, it's in England post World War II, and it's got tons of humor in it, but it's got like the highs and the lows, the lights and the darks. Yeah. And it's at this English country home. And so a lot of the stories take place there, trying to save the home from falling into rack and ruin,
Yeah.
So it's good, but it's the only series that I know of that like, I read it, my brother read it. Like it's got like a wide range of people reading it. It's one of those that kind of broke out a couple of years ago. And so that was good. And there's this one that I read that kind of started me on this historical series writing thing called The Affair of the Bloodstained Egg Cozy by James Anderson. And I read it and I thought for sure it was written in the 20s and 30s. And I went and looked it up and it was not. It was written like in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And in my mind, I was like, oh, so I feel like by writing stuff set like in the 20s and 30s, it has the ability to last longer and to be more timeless than things that are written now, because people will assume, they may know, but there's just something about that, being able to write about something in history that kind of this started me on that whole, wow, what if I wrote something set in 1920? So so that one for that. And then Murder at the Brightwell by Ashley Weaver is about this group of people that they go to a hotel. It's on the coast of England and there's, murder, but you would love it because there's this plot line between a woman who she's married and her husband have this kind of difficult relationship where she's not sure if he is like forced proximity. Like they're not sure if she's not sure if he loves her. He's kind of a playboy. And so there's like all this romantic tension all throughout.
Cool.
And they're trying to figure out, where they stand and solve the mystery at the same time. So I like those multi-layered plots like that. Then I put down Murder on a Ship or a Train, Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, classics. Don't need to say much more about those.
No.
Night's Train to Memphis is by Elizabeth Peters. It's also set on Nile, and it's just one of those. She's one of my favorite authors.
Yeah,
love her stuff. Murder on the Flying Scotsman by Corolla Dunn is on a train, and like that romance of train travel. Love that. Then I put down Discreet Sleuth because that's one of my favorite like subgenres, and that's like the World's Spiness series by Reese Bowen and the Discreet Retrieval series by Maya Chance. So it's like women, usually a lot of historical ones, women that are kind of they become a sleuth, but they're not a police officer, but they're doing it for like a certain high society set, kind of like my series. So those kind of were influenced me. So, but the Discreet Retrieval series is hilarious, and it's got like an odd couple pairing of this woman whose husband dies and she has no money and all her servants leave, but her cook sticks by her. And so they investigate and they figure out a way to make money by helping this upper crust society in New York. And the cook is very practical and down to earth, and the other woman is a little more flighty, and so they're just a funny pair to have together.
Right.
And then I wrote.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I wrote down two more things that I was thinking about, like just for the traditional contemporary cozy series. I love English Village. That's my favorite subgenre. So H.Y. Hannah has a series. She has several series now set in England. She's got a Cottage Garden series and a Oxford Tea Room series. So I love that. Agatha Raisin, the books, those are great, and the show is great. And then Clara Benson, she has two series. Those are historical, but they are kind of that light country house mystery type of story. And then, the other contemporary cozy series that I've read recently and really enjoyed the first one is called The Good Byline by Jill Orr. And it's about a woman she's an obituary writer. And I was like, oh, that's so brilliant. Cause because she's got to go talk to these people who have just died. And so it's a perfect setup for a cozy mystery. The small town Southern, that's another big trope is Southern mysteries. And so that's really good. And then I did think of two more that I don't have down on the list, two more kind of subcategories. There's like a gentleman sleuth series or like the aristocratic sleuth kind of subgenre. And my favorite series in that is an old one. It's called The Good Thief's Guide to, and then has different cities. And so like the first one is to Amsterdam. And it's this man that, he's kind of on the shady side of the law, but he's got a good heart, and he gets involved in a murder because he breaks in somewhere at the wrong time. And so it's a little bit different. So I like that. And then my other favorite, or other type of series I like to read is like the ensemble cast. So, and it's more like if you've ever watched New Tricks, it's a series. So like you've got like the person who never wants to be in charge. He's usually been demoted. And then they're in charge of this unit that they have to be in. And and then they have like all these people that come together that they all are kind of misfits, like the ensemble cast of misfits. And I cannot think of the title, but there's one book, or it's two books that have been translated from French into English. It's the same. It's that setup, but it is so well done and is so entertaining. It's funny and it's just got great characters and a great mystery. So I will find that one and put it in the show notes since I can't think of the title. But I love that. That's one of my favorite types.
Right. Well, I was just thinking the Discreet Sleuth, since we had her as a guest, Gail Carringer's the Parasol Protectorate series is very, very good. And it's that kind, and it's it's paranormal, a little steampunk. But love those a lot. And I love some of the ones you said, because I do love a good mystery. I love it. And um, I love a private detective, PI. I would have to say one of my favorites is the Robert Galbraith's Cormoran Strike books.
Yeah.
Those are just so good. So good. Yeah, but it's all the same, they have the tropes. Like in the Cormoran Strike, he is very down on his luck, like pretty much broke and, becomes sort of famous, but there's always something bad happening to him. And so those are tropes, those are not just the way she wrote those are tropes in that genre.
The PI, when I was thinking about that earlier when we were talking about mystery and cozy, we didn't touch on PI, but usually like it's the PI has some dark, sad backstory, and like the cliche is like his partner's been killed, and so you can work with that and make it a little bit different, or change it a little bit. You can't trust anyone. You got your suspects coming to you saying, "Hey, this is what happened," and then you got to
everybody's lying.
Really, what happened?
Exactly. Well, let's talk about twist on tropes. Tell me about. I don't know. I might have seen this, listened to this podcast.
Yeah, it's been out a while.
But I can't remember. So tell me. Let's talk about that.
So Tim Waggoner gave some different examples, and I just thought they were very interesting. It'd be interesting to talk about. So the first thing he talked about was like if you take a trope and reverse it. So his example was zombies who think they're human. And so I was trying to think of a trope, like if we could come up with some examples of tropes that you could reverse. And, do you have any ideas? I guess like the opposite of small town would be like you take your protagonist to the city.
Yeah, you take a small town person to the city. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that would work like in a cozy though, because cozy readers like that small town, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that would work for that.
That's
I'm
true.
sure we could come up with something else.
Yeah. But I do love the zombies that think they're humans. There's a movie, and I don't know if it's based on a book, but it's Warm Bodies, and they're zombies. Yeah. And they think that they as this relationship grows, I think she's human. And he becomes more human as, he as they get together. I love that.
I guess a twist on like the discreet sleuth would be someone who wants to be discreet but can't, like they're really well known, and so their struggle would be to be like under the radar, and they would not be able to do that every single time. Or maybe you tell the story like the Sherlock Holmes, the great detective. Instead of it being about Sherlock, it's about Watson. Like maybe Watson had this Watson character, this secret detective life that they're brilliant at, but nobody knows. Or something like that.
Well, and like you could take like the rock star, which I did do pretty accidentally, but or any like famous person or big city person, and you put them in a small town. Like, so that's that fish out of water. Or you take the small town person and put them, throw them into a situation that is totally out of their
comfort zone
element. And comfort zone.
Okay. And then the next one was he said, mix and match imagery. And his example, Tim Waggoner's example, was zombies that move quickly instead of slowly. So that's like just a little tiny change. And I would think that could be like when you take the country house mystery and basically you transplant it and you put it on a boat or on a train or at a ski lodge or something. Right.
Yeah, I watched a Netflix movie the other night, and I'm going to pull it up because I cannot remember the name of it. Army of the Dead? Is it Army of the Dead? It's new. It's one of their newer ones that has just come out. Yeah, Army of the Dead, and it's with the guy from It's with the guy from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah.
The big guy, I can't think of his name. But anyway, so Las Vegas has turned into zombie land, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But these zombies move out, and they're like these hybrid zombies.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, like, there's a relationship between the zombie king and queen, like a physical love relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, so it's very different, very, very
Mm-hmm.
different. It was very, very grotesque, grotesquely and gratuitously bloody, but it was great. I loved it, and I laughed because it is supposed to be kind of a black comedy, and
Oh, that's funny.
yeah. So
Yeah.
but it's that kind of thing, where
Yeah.
you take something
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
different, like, and then that you could take, like a wounded hero there's a movie, but a wounded hero who's like a self-help
Oh,
guru.
yeah. Yeah.
There's that movie with Jennifer Aniston,
Yeah.
where
I can't think the name of it either.
I can't either,
Yeah.
but yeah, you could do that. And that creates all kinds of conflict,
Mm-hmm.
and for a romance, that would be
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down. I might need to write that, but
Make a note to yourself right now.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one was, he said, just put new clothes on around the trope. And this is a quote from him. If you can figure out a trope and what lies at its core, you can basically put a new set of clothes on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought about this one, like when you were talking about the beach read, the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of forced proximity, but not really. So it's
Not
like
really,
you're kind of taking that closeness, but you're putting a new parameters around it.
Right. Yeah, and like in Beach Read too, not only is she having to deal with this neighbor who she has a little history with, thinks, thinks he doesn't remember her. He does, but she thinks he does. But she's also dealing with this super personal issue, painfully personal issue, and that's why she's at the beach house in the first place. So, it's kind of like, it's almost like women's fiction wrapped in a romance, because she really is dealing with, it's really, really painful and super personal and stuff. So, you could do that, or like the paranormal women's fiction people who have, they've come up with this whole kind of midlife crisis, meets women's fiction, meets paranormal, and which is fantastic. I mean, those books are great. And so, just there again, you need to know the rules, and then you can break the rules, and you can come up with your own sort of thing.
Yeah, you can put your own twist on it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, instead of a gentleman sleuth, that's kind of, or a gentleman thief, that's kind of the trope. You could have, maybe, I would like the gender swap would be like a female, but it might be more interesting to go female 80-year-old,
right.
Something that's like crazy and weird that you wouldn't think of, as long as you can make it believable enough that readers will go there with you.
Right. Or Dexter. He's a police officer, but he's a serial killer, but he's a good serial killer because he only kills bad guys. I mean, it's just like people that come up with stuff like that. I'm like, they're genius. I don't know that I'm that
twisted too.
Yeah, very twisted. But I mean, so just don't. I mean, like I said, on one hand, know the tropes, know them, but don't let them like put you in a box. You can experiment. You can try things. You just have to, when you try them, like with Dexter, let's say, I mean, first of all, that's total built-in conflict. He's a serial killer and he works for the police department.
Like internal angst and conflict. Yeah.
Yes. So when they did the mix and match, they did a mix and match that would create immediate conflict, immediate problems, immediate storylines, basically. So that's what you have to do when you're trying to mix and match and do these things. Do it in a way that's going to make it basically easy to write the story. I mean, that story sort of writes itself,
because it's fresh and different, but it's familiar. That's what people want.
Right.
I was thinking about like the subplot, the romantic arc of the sleuth in the investigating officer, and usually it's the female sleuth and the male investigating officer.
Right.
And he's, and I've read so many books with that situation that I'm over it. I want something different. But I was trying to think, how could you flip that? So you could change it so that the sleuth is a male and the investigating officer is a female.
Right.
So, that would be different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what they did with Castle. She's the investigating officer and the amateur sleuth is Castle.
Right.
You could do something like that. I don't know. Anyway, just thinking about different ways that could work.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Or you have an ex-con who, gets into amateur sleuthing or private detective work, or something like that, where they're trying to right a wrong, or something like that. And
and then see, that gives you like almost a series arc.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could take that beyond just one book.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, use your imaginations. We're writers. We have big imaginations. We can do it. I'm sure.
So let's see. You had a book recommendation, right?
I do. So there's a book on tropes called Romance, Tropes, and Hooks by Karen Winter. And it is great, y'all. It is everything. Like, it makes my piddly list look like nothing. Because she really breaks it down and kind of tells you what kind of, what the trope involves. Anyway, it's really good. You should.
Yeah. So we will definitely have a link to that.
Yeah.
And some of these other things that we talked about earlier. Yeah. We'll have some links in there, but probably not all of them, because it'll take me all day.
Yes.
So we'll have that. And then we are really curious. We want to know what your favorite trope is to write.
Yeah.
Or if you have any ideas on reversing, mixing and matching, anything like that. We would love to hear your thoughts on tropes and what your favorites are. So come on over to the Facebook group.
We're going to put a question in there. Yeah.
And let us know what your favorite tropes are. We'd love to hear your take on this.
Yep. Yeah. So that's it this week. I hope you enjoyed it as we took a trip down Trope Road. And anyway, one thing we really didn't talk about is how to use the tropes, like in ad copy and blurbs. I mean, I touched on it, but I will say this, like when I'm doing my ads, I will put, like, in the headline, no, not the headline, the description, like the thing that's right underneath, like on a Facebook page, like on a Facebook ad, things right under the picture, the tropes, a lot of times, like rock star, good girl, small town rom-com, or something like that, because that catches the eye of people who love those sorts of things. Plus rock star, good girl, that tells you it's an opposites attract book right there. Or if I'm doing an Amazon ad, if I do copy, I will put the little beginning blurb of rock star. She's a small town Sunday school teacher. He's a bad boy rock god. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. I mean, there you go. You just know. Yeah.
Encapsulated right there.
All encapsulated. So when you're writing your copy and when you're writing your blurbs, really kind of look at that. Also, your covers can signify what your tropes are in a lot of ways. So that, I think, is really good to try to think about when you're you're designing covers, and stuff.
It's like you have brides on your covers. They're all brides. I mean, that's kind of the theme, runaway bride. But then it's very clear, even the trope in each book is clear on each cover from just the clothes that the models are wearing.
Yes, yeah.
And there's a reason that, like, my English Village series has cute little cottages and stately homes, because that's what people that I'm trying to attract will go,
right.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's something important to point out, that it's not just in writing the book, but it's when you're promoting the book and advertising the book, you can really use the tropes for that too.
Yeah. So I have a quick question. Have you ever started with one trope and changed to another, or do you always know which one you're doing?
I generally know which one I'm doing, but I have added. Like
Just a few, huh?
yeah, my books rarely have just one trope in them, and I don't really
Yeah.
know. I mean, most romance books I think maybe have multiple tropes, but yeah, I haven't ever switched. I will tell you this though: the books that I don't know the trope of have been much harder to write, much harder to write than the ones that I knew from the beginning, this is what this book is, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or the ones I wasn't familiar with, like Running from the Law is a Surprise Baby and Second Chance. And I didn't read a lot of Surprise Baby, Second Chance books before I started writing that book. And I learned my lesson pretty quickly with that, because you really, even if it's not a trope you love, if you're going to write it, you should know how to write it. And you should really, because some tropes, it's easy to kind of veer off and make, like for that one, Second Chance, Surprise Baby, that could be kind of, like Second Chances sometimes can be kind of sad, because a lot of times they broke up and it was bad and they carry a lot of baggage or whatever from it. And I hadn't really realized that until I was in the middle of writing that book. And I'm like, this book isn't as funny as the other books. Why is that? Well, it's because of that,
more melancholy.
Yeah. It's a little more melancholy. Yeah. So anyway, just something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking that, like, I feel like this very specific marketing to a certain trope is fairly recent. I would think more indie authors are doing it now and doing it really well in romance. So I have a feeling that it will come to all the other genres eventually, because, romance always leads with everything they have, So I feel like that's not as well developed. And so I don't think about it as much in my ad copy and things, or even when I'm writing, really, I just write I'm not thinking about the tropes, but I know what they are. So I'm just kind of incorporating them as I go. Right. But I think that would be I've never sat down thinking, well, one time I did sit down and think, okay, I want to write a book that has a body swap, like the dead body is swapped for somebody else. And so I have done that, but then you can't really market that because you're giving away a huge twist. So you can't do.
Right.
Yeah. You have to think about like what will appeal.
Yeah.
And what will pull readers in that you can use in your blurb.
Right. Exactly. Anyway. Exactly. All right. Well, tell them where they can find out more about
okay, so we'll
podcast and everything.
Yeah. So you can find all the links at wishidknownthen podcast.com and come over to the Facebook group and let us know your thoughts on tropes and your favorite tropes to write. And thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast. And we'll see y'all next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.